Welcome back. We move on to our second big conversation point, and that's the big political face-off over the farm laws, the three new laws. Yes, there are laws. The president has given his assent and approved these three laws that were passed by the parliament. But the opposition parties haven't given up the fight yet. In fact, let me tell you what they are still saying. For example, in Punjab, the Congress government has said they will not implement the farm bills in the state, that they are exploring and they are planning to approach the top court against these three legislations. The Kerala government, one Kerala MP has already gone to court against these legislations, and the Kerala government says we are not going to implement these bills. We will also approach the top court and challenge these laws. Maharashtra government and the NCP, the Home Minister specifically, has already said they are not going to be implemented in Maharashtra, especially the Essential Commodities Act amendment. Chhattisgarh government has said we will bring a resolution in our own house against these farm bills, and we will figure out what kind of legal battle has to be fought, but we won't allow the implementation. Now, here is a simple question, viewers. When the centre and the cabinet has approved a law, and in this case three laws, and it has been passed by both the lower house and the upper house of the parliaments, it has been given the nod by the president of this country. In the field of agriculture specifically, where states also have a right to form their own laws, even today in our country, many states have different setups of how farming, selling, producing, distribution, storage, all of that functions. Do the states have a say? Can they say, no, we're not going to implement this, we have our own set of rules and that's what we're going to follow? Or is there only option to go to the top court? Before I go across to our politicians, let's get in a legal perspective on this, and former Additional Solicitor General Mr. Siddharth Luthra is joining me this evening. Mr. Luthra, to your mind, just like we saw, in the case of NRC, where the state said they're not going to implement it, or even in the case of Motor Vehicles Amendment Act, when many states said we will not implement these steep fines, the decision is ours. Is that possible when it comes to agriculture-related legislations?
First of all, I must tell you that while agriculture is partly covered in the second list, which is the state list, in the concurrent list, trade and commerce, production, supply, distribution of certain agricultural foodstuffs, etc., agricultural products, foodstuffs, is covered under the concurrent list, which is the list common to both state and centre. Therefore, the centre is entitled to bring in legislation of this kind, specifically under the entry. Having said that, the constitutional position is very clear. If a law has been validly brought in by one of the legislatures, whether it be the centre or the state legislature, in this case parliament, it is a situation of constitutional anarchy, as I would call it. If states choose not to comply with such laws, there is of course a legal challenge if you so wish, and if there is a legal ground available, to challenge the validity of the laws, to say that they're constitutionally infirm. But having said that, I think in a democracy where every part of our leadership, whether it be the central leaders or the state leaders, the ministers, the MPs, all of them have sworn to uphold the constitution. Part of that is respect for other constitutional and legislative bodies. And it is that respect which is now increasingly diminishing in political catfights, and that's becoming the problem.
Okay. So one option, of course, is to go to the court, which the Kerala government, one of the Kerala leaders has already done so. The Punjab government is exploring. But outside of a legal case, do the states have a right to say, we are not going to ratify this?
I don't think it's a case of ratification, it's a case of implementation. Under, as I said, the third schedule, there is no occasion for them, because as long as there is no existing state law, the central law is going to prevail and the president's given assent. So therefore, my view is really this. It is not within the domain of the states to seek to, if I may say, rebel and not implement the law. The law will have to be implemented, because that's the whole balance of powers between state and center that we have. And we must always remember that though we talk about federalism in this country and there is a quasi-federal structure, it is only that is quasi-federal. A lot of powers really remain with the center, and once there's a coordinate list, there's no occasion for the states to oppose the implementation of the law.
So, in simpler words, Mr. Luthra, is it a lot of mere grandstanding right now that we may be seeing by political parties who are saying we'll pass a resolution in our own house, but we're not going to implement this? Effectively, they don't have the right to do that, because this may just cause a lot of confusion otherwise to the farming community.
Look, each legislature has its own sovereign powers and his own powers, and they act within the ambit. So they are entitled to pass a resolution if they can muster the numbers together. But passing a resolution is not the same thing as upsetting a law. If that would happen, there would be constitutional anarchy, as I said. You can't have state legislatures. They can object to the law or the manner in which they believe it's been passed, but they can't overturn a law by passing a resolution in the state legislature. Still, if it's a valid law, it remains a valid law till the court strikes it down. And today, while there may have been a challenge filed, no court has accepted the challenge, stayed the operation of the law, or passed any adverse order regarding the implementation. That is the legal remedy. And in a constitutional frame of things, this grandstanding must also end, because eventually we have to see, are we going to leave the farmers of this country, and I happen to be the grandson of a farmer, are we going to leave the farmers of this country in a state of limbo while we have these political catfights? It's an unfortunate situation. In an ideal situation, there should have been an involved consensus on the bringing in of these laws, but that's not happened. And we must, in legislations which impact such a major portion of our population, have a political consensus. But since that's not been achieved, we can't say that the law is not valid.
Well, you're absolutely right there, and I wish there was an ideal situation, but that is not to be seen at all. I wish there was a more exhaustive conversation on a law which is so important, 3 legislations that will impact over half the population of this country, but that's not to be. So now we'll have to see which way it goes from here on. But thank you, Mr. Luthra, for joining us and really clarifying and helping us understand the legalities of the law currently and the face-off that now we are witnessing between the states and the centre. Let's say good evening to the political representatives who are joining us now. I've got Mr. Syed Afzal Abbas, senior leader of the JDU, T.R. Prasad Gowda, leader of the JDS, Adil Singh Bopara, national spokesperson for the Congress party, and Gopal Krishna Agarwal, national spokesperson for the BJP. But first up, let me go across to Mr. Mahesh Tapase, spokesperson for the NCP, because Mr. Tapase, our Home Minister and NCP leader, Mr. Deshmukh, has already said that these laws will not be implemented in the state. But Mr. Tapase, how do we do that? Under what law or act does the state have the power right now to block a central legislation?
There are too many lacunas which we feel are not addressed in the correct format while framing the law. The law got passed in the Lok Sabha. We were very certain that it will not make through the Rajya Sabha. And the opposition MPs have been demanding that the bill should be placed in front of the Joint Select Committee before any consensus would have arrived. So what exactly happened? The opposition MLAs were made to go out, they were suspended from the Rajya Sabha, and in a very hurried manner, the law was passed. Now, as far as the law is concerned, on the face of it, it looks very, very nice, talking good about the farmers. But the core of the situation is, the crux of the situation is, what happens in a down market? What happens when the prices crash? What is the security in terms of the MSP to the common farmer who has now nobody? He doesn't have the government at the back of his protection. Like earlier, the procurement would have been done by the Food Corporation, by the Central Warehousing Corporation, the Cotton Federation, and so many other agencies would do the procurement. Now, with that option having exhausted, or probably he trying to go and sell, I'm not saying that he should not sell, but whether such kind of corporations, the FCI, will have the requisite funds allotted in the central budget of the country to do the procurement, or they will just presume that the farmer will happily sell his produce to the private player? Now, this is one of the questions. Now, when you do a contract farming, supposing you do a contract farming at X price, and the next year the price is X plus 2 or X plus 1, in that case, whether the same contract allows the farmer to get benefit of the price rise. So these are the multiple things that is happening now in one sphere. You are limiting the scope of the Essential Commodity Act. You are getting certain food crops out of the scope. Then you are enforcing a total ban on the export. So these things are, kind of putting the farmer in such a situation and he's wondering whether the government is actually trying to help him or try to deride him and try to stop him from making an economic growth. So these are certain questions which definitely come up in the minds of the people. As far as the Agriculture Produce Market Committee is concerned, it is there. The farmer in Maharashtra has a right to sell his crop to the APMC or to the private corporate or private person who can buy. But now once the cushion of the MSP is
I
withdrawn,
understand, Mr. Tapase.
is withdrawn, and we don't know.
Mr. Tapase, tonight the conversation. I'm
exactly.
sorry, the conversation is not tonight about the merits of these laws, Mr. Tapase. There is no point in you that anymore. The fact of the matter is that it has been passed by the cabinet, by Lok Sabha, by Rajya Sabha, and the assent has been given by the president.
Yes,
it is a law in our country today.
Yes,
Now,
Tanvi, the law
so the
has been
simple
passed.
question to me is, how can a state block it when the center and the parliament has passed it?
We are very well within our rights to have a different view of the law which is passed, and we can at any time and all the time request the central government to take back the law. I think it's within the purview of every citizen of free India, and it's his constitutional right to demand the government that if certain thing that the agrarian community feels is not within the scope of the agriculture sector, then the government should repeal it or modify it. So there is nothing wrong in that.
Okay, fair enough. But that's what it is. It can't be a case of the state saying, no, we're not going to implement it, Adil Singh Bopara, because then that's just going to be grandstanding. Either you go to the Supreme Court and get an order to say so. Otherwise, how can any state, be it Chhattisgarh, Punjab or Rajasthan or any other state, really block a central legislation?
So we are contemplating all legal measures.
Can I answer? Tanvi, before I answer that question of yours, there's something which I would like to quote. There is something which I would like to quote. This is Mr. Narendra Modi as Chief Minister of Gujarat in the year 2011 in his written report to the central government. And he says, in respect of all essential commodities, we should protect farmers' interests by mandating through statutory provisions that no farmer trader transaction should be below MSP wherever prescribed. This is Mr. Narendra Modi who says in 2011 that the MSP must be statutorily included in any agriculture legislation. But of course, the Bharatiya Janata Party and hypocrisy go hand in hand. Now, responding to your question, the most fundamental point here is, Tanvi, that agriculture and markets comes under the state list. This is a subject which squarely falls within the responsibility and the ambit of the state government. So therefore, our first submission is that the parliament and the central government had no right to legislate on subjects which are exclusively within the domain of the state governments. Point number one. Point number two, if you kindly peruse Article 254, subclause 2, here again, even if a central legislation exists, notwithstanding a central legislation, if the state government legislates on a subject which is exclusively within its domain and the president gives its assent, then it's the state legislation which will prevail. Now, these are as far as the legalities of this are concerned. But what is more important is that the Bharatiya Janata Party, through its draconian laws, is completely privatizing and corporatizing Indian agriculture, which is a worry. 60 crore Indian farmers are affected. And look at the hypocrisy of the Bharatiya Janata Party. They thrust this legislation down the state governments. They thrust this legislation down the farmers. And there is just absolutely no consideration, no window for any kind of negotiation or any kind of backtracking. It's not just the Congress party. It's not just the farmer organizations. Their oldest ally, the Akali Dal, has read this. They've walked out of the alliance. Mr. Nitish Kumar, though belatedly, has also pointed out that the MSP must be fixed. So therefore, we just don't understand why is it that the Bharatiya Janata Party is pushing a legislation which will be disastrous, and we cannot trust the central government. And I'll give you an example why we can't trust the central government. This is not something which is in the abstract.
Okay, no, again, Adil, may I just come in here? Again, I am not here, and we've had exhaustive debates on the merits of it. The fact of the matter is, it's now a law. The only way forward from here is to either go to the top court and ask them to hear about, on this case, or we go ahead and implement the law and see how it pans out. If there is an issue with the MSP, you will push for a legislation to bring in the MSP. Let's be honest, Adil, you know it and I know it. Today in the country, what percentage of the farmers are actually getting the minimum support price? They aren't. So that's completely a different matter. Let me in fact bring in.
No, Tanvi, hear me out. Number one.
Okay.
Please,
So
let's not skirt the core issue. Agriculture and markets comes under the state list. This is fundamental. This question has to be put to the Bharatiya Janata Party. Why are you legislating on subjects which are
but we just had
domain? Number one. Number two.
So exactly the question I just raised, Adil. I'm not too sure if you heard what Siddharth Luthra had to say, but I had a legal voice here, and he made it very clear that while core agriculture is a state subject, the commercial activities linked to agriculture do come under the center. Mr. Gopal Agarwal, will you be able to shed more light on this? Where does the center's role come? Is this the prerogative of the center to form this law, or is it the state's choice? If it is the state's choice, then how is the center making regulations?
Tanvi, this is the basic point that I want to make here, is that APMC and agriculture market through the local mandis is under the domain of the state government under our constitution, and center cannot pass any law amending the APMC Act unilaterally. This is the stated position that I want to state here in front of your viewers from the Bharatiya Janata Party officially. And this is the where catch-22 situation which the Congress and opposition itself are putting themselves into. When we are saying that we have no legislative domain on passing of amending APMC Act, how they are claiming that we are amending the APMC Act? So this is the way we want to tell that neither we are dismantling the local Mandis Act, neither we are amending the APMC Act. They will continue as it is under the domain of the state government. One thing. Second thing is, MSP is a mechanism, administrative mechanism, which the central government announces the minimum support price for the various commodities on the recommendation of the CACP, which has a representative from the farmers. And that price is an indicative price on which the state governments have to procure from their respective farmers through the APMC mandis and local mandis, etc. So for the implementation of the MSP also, the state government is responsible. Now these both two things, the MSP declaration of MSP is the center's administrative decision, which we have already done for the current year, depending upon the recommendation of the CACP and in the floor of the parliament. Now it is on the state government to implement and procure them. You yourself, the third point, important point here is that there is very little procurement by the state governments across the country, and the farmers are not getting anything as a minimum support price. And over the years, over the 65 years, MSP has become the upper floor price, and the generally procurement is taking place through the nexus of the middlemen like Adil Singh Bhupara and their friends, who act as a middleman and procure from the farmers at a lower than the MSP price. And that is the worry of the farmers. And therefore, over the last 20 years, if you look into any committee report, whether it is the Parliament Standing Committee on Agriculture or the various committee like MS Swaminathan committee or Shanta Kumar committee or various agriculture associations, etc., they have been asking that we need to amend the marketing structure of the farming sectors, and it is not only the MSP or the Mandi Act, but across we need to attract lot of investment through attracting private players into the supply chain.
So, Mr. Gopal Agarwal, just one question, one small question, Mr. Agarwal. I got your point. But you say, for example, you say that there are those out there who are procuring. I will come to you, don't worry. You are saying, I am asking you a follow-up question. You are saying there are those people who are procuring at a much lower price than what the farmer should be getting right now. How do the new legislations protect the farmer from that? You are simply just opening up the market, but you're not protecting them for having to sell at a lower price.
The thing, now you have come to the right point, which the farmer should understand. What is happening is that there is no competition. The Mandis Act, Mandis have a monopoly on the farmers' procurement, and they manipulate and exploit farmers that you cannot sell outside the Mandi other to the other state, and you have to sell to us. Therefore, we will only procure at this rate, and you cannot go anywhere. This was the monopoly which was being created by the middlemen, and particularly by people like Congress supporters who exploited the farmers. And therefore, we need a competitive market where there is an alternative market mechanism which helps procurement of the farmer and give competition to this Mandi's monopoly, break their monopoly. And interstate trade, commodity trade, is in the domain of the central government. And therefore, we have opened the interstate commodities trade and provided an alternative market mechanism to the farmers, so that they have a competition in the market. They can, if they want, they can sell outside, and if they want, they can sell to the MSP through the local mandis. This option we are giving to the farmers. So where is the problem with the Congress for this option? This all misinformation. And
all right. So let me. I have two more panelists to go. I have two more panelists.
10 seconds.
30 seconds.
I have in a democracy, I understand that everybody has the right to agitate, but you do not agitate by the way you burnt tractors on the Rajpath of the country, and in the way the Congress is giving false information, agitating, creating violence. This is not the way that the difference of opinion is expressed.
Please, something which can't go unchallenged.
Before I go across to Mr. Gowda and Mr. Abbas, yes, Adil, go ahead, respond please.
Number one, I'm so glad Mr. Agarwal has let the cat out of the bag. He's right. The Bharatiya Janata Party is implementing the recommendations of the Shanta Kumar Committee of 2015. And Mr. Shanta Kumar had recommended that we must abolish MSP. He has let the cat out of his bag inadvertently, number one. Number two, if the BJP is so confident that the farmers will get a higher remunerative price in the alternate or the private markets, then why don't they put a stipulation that the floor price for transactions in the alternate market would be the MSP? Mr. Agarwal seems to be
how much procurement you have on MSP? Sir, it's an indicative price.
Number three, I didn't interrupt, Mr. Agarwal. Please don't interrupt like this. Number three, there is a defect in the legal resolution mechanism also. Now there is an embargo under the Act that no farmer can approach the civil court, which means that in the event of a dispute between the farmer and a private player, the dispute will have to be settled by the SDM and the district commissioner or the district magistrate. Here again, what chance or what negotiating ability or matrix does an ordinary farmer who owns 5 hectares or 3 hectares of land has vis-a-vis a Jio or an Ambani or an Adani? So let's look at it practically. You are opening the floodgates. You are not providing for a dispute resolution mechanism. And at the same time, you are not ensuring that in the alternate market, there will be a floor price, which will be the MSP at the least. The BJP is getting caught in its own bind. And it's not just us saying, their own allies have red flagged it. You cannot run a country of the size and magnitude of India with your diktats. You destroyed the economy with demonetization. You have retracted from your GST commitments. And now the third embargo is to destroy Indian agriculture and hand it over to your corporate cronies. We will not let this happen. Please be
unfortunately now, these arguments will have to be presented if anybody goes to the court and the Supreme Court admits the case and wants to hear it. Outside of that, the merits of the bill really don't help us anymore because they've been passed by the Parliament and they've been given the nod by the President. But can the state really block it? This is what I want to talk about today, or is the only option to go to the Supreme Court. And as this plays out, it will be the farmers who get confused about what's happening, what's supposed to be followed, what's getting implemented in which part of our country. Mr. Gowda, can the states really be blocking? Can the states really block it right now?
Please come again, madam. Please, please come again.
Can the states block a law that has been passed by the Parliament now?
Madam, I would like to mention here, overall Modi government, Modi-led BJP government, taken farmers for granted. They know BJP only think, they can take farmers, they can bluff the farmers during the election by taking some sentimental issues. That much I can tell you. Whenever they come to power, for instance, I would like to bring it to your kind notice and to the whole country notice that when they come to the power for the first time, that time also they tried to implement this kind of land amendment rules. But I would like to bring it to your notice that they can take any land at any point of time wherever they want in the country, and people are not entitled to go for the court also. This is the kind of thing when Modi government come to power, as soon as they come to power, they have done it. And the second time Modi government has come to power, they are trying to implement the same kind of rules by law, by passing the law in the parliament. See, that clearly indicates this Modi government is against the farmers. Against the farmers. They only wanted to please some of the industrialists. Who are responsible for installing this BJP government in the center. I do not want to mention who are all the industrialists. Pardon?
How are you saying this is for the industrialists? Which industrialist is benefiting, sir? Please give us facts right now. Which change in law that the government
Ambani
is
brothers,
right now is going to benefit?
Madam, everybody in this country who are politically aware, Modi government trying to
No, I know. I'm not talking about political
Ambani
aware.
brothers,
I'm talking about the
Adani,
actual
and
law.
many more. No. I will come to that point. But they wanted to please some of the industry.
This is a law in our country now. It has been passed and the clearance has been given by the president. Please don't waste the time of my viewers with rhetorics now, Mr. Gowda. Tell me now, how can the states block it? It's been passed by the parliament.
No. See, when the farmer of this country doesn't want this, why? Our question is, why do you want to impose forcefully? Of course, you have power, you have done. President has signed it. Okay, fine. But when the farmer of this country, poor farmer of this country, do not want this law, why do you want to impose that's what, as a opposition party people, we can only ask this. See, when you have power, you have implemented, president signed, of course, okay. But the farmer is not happy. People of this country is not happy. You are still to whom you wanted to please? If farmer of this country? No, farmer of this country is not happy because of your rules. And APMC rules, farmer is not at all happy. Our BJP friend is giving some good thing. He is telling it is good for the farmers. Because of this amendment, farmer will come to the street again. Only Dalal of this country will shine again. Only with the interest of these people, the BJP government is trying to do all these amendments. I do not know. I do not know. GDP of this country has gone minus 30, and till where country will go and stand, we do not know. At this
GDP
point
has
of
nothing.
time,
No,
when
no,
COVID is
no.
going
So, Mr.
on,
Gowda, let's
when
stick to the
the-
debate.
what was
Let's stick to
what
the
was the
debating
necessity?
topic right now. You're right. This is politics going on. That's the whole point. This is politics
what
going
was
on.
the
A day
necessity
after,
of bringing-
the
What was
bills
the
have
necessity
been given
of
the
bringing,
permission,
imposing
the
this kind
assent
of
by
laws
the
during
president.
this
Everything
pandemic?
else is merely grandstanding right now. I'm sorry. Your party should have woken up when the laws had been passed by the cabinet before it came into the parliament. That's when you should have asked these questions,
And
not after they've been passed by the
where
parliament
they-
itself.
in
Now
this
you can
gov-
go to
this
the court.
government
Please
is
go
not
to the
ready
court.
discuss.
Please
This
go to the
government
court
is
now
not
if
ready
you
to
have a
discuss.
problem. Mr. Abbas, Syed Afzal Abbas hasn't spoken
this
yet.
is
Mr.
what you
Abbas,
wanted
let
to
me
tell.
come to you. मुझे ये बताएं
Court
कि
is
ये
always
एक
open for
part
everybody.
of the state, it is
but
part
people
of
of this
state
country is not
laws.
happy with
Part
the
of it
government.
is 1 minute, Mr. Gowda, please. Now let me go to our last panelist. He's not spoken yet. Mr. Syed Afzal Abbas, here is my question to you. Now that the center has passed it, what powers do the state have? या जैसे बिहार में है, the structure is different. Lot of APMC rules which are governed by the state are different. Can the state government still not ensure that the farmer gets the right price at least in the mandis?
साफ साफ ये है कि ये या तो डायरेक्ट भी आप दे सकते हैं और मिडिल मैन को भी। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि जहां तक मुझे इसके बारे में बहुत डेप्थ नॉलेज नहीं है, फिर भी ये कह सकता हूँ कि बिल जो पास हुआ है तो केंद्र सरकार से पास है, तो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को फॉलो करना चाहिए। लेकिन कुछ अड़चने आ रही हैं, फिर सुप्रीम कोर्ट भी जा रहे हैं और विरोध भी कर रहे हैं। बिहार में अगर ये किसानों के हित में है, अब डायरेक्ट सेल की बातें, बिचौलियों को हटाया जा रहा है, तो तानी मैं समझता हूँ कि इसका फायदा डायरेक्ट को मिलना चाहिए। और अगर आप जैसे छोटे छोटे किसान हैं जिनका प्रोडक्शन कम है, तो वो उनका कौन खरीदेगा, प्रोडक्ट कौन खरीदेगा, तो वो आजाद है, कहीं भी बेच सकते हैं। तो ऐसी स्थिति में विरोध ना करके इसमें जो है वो कानूनी जो दांव पेच है वो सुप्रीम कोर्ट में जाने की लोग बात कर रहे हैं, जाएंगे, लेकिन ओवरऑल स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को इस बात को मानना चाहिए। 50% देश की आबादी है, वो लोग जो किसान थे उन्होंने प्रोटेस्ट किया था, उसको फेवर में मान किया था। आज कुछ लोग विरोध कर रहे हैं। मुझे यकीन है कि ये बिल सबको, हर स्टेट को मानना पड़ेगा।
Okay, so let me ask this question then to Adil. Adil, let me come to you, and here is what I am reading. What Kapil Sibal said when the Citizenship Amendment Act had been passed, and the states were saying they're not going to implement it, they're not going to allow it in their own state, they're going to oppose it, they're going to pass resolutions in their own house. Mr. Kapil Sibal said if the CA is passed, no state can say I will not implement it. Mr. Salman Khurshid said if the Supreme Court doesn't interfere, it will remain on the statute book. And if something's on the statute book, you've got to obey the law, else there are consequences. So, Adil, honestly speaking, today, the only option is to go to the court, but the states themselves can't block it.
Tanvi, you're comparing apples with oranges. Citizenship comes under list 1 of the 7th schedule. So obviously, the exclusive domain, exclusive plenary legislative power to legislate on the subject which comes under list 1 is with the parliament. As far as agriculture and markets, please don't forget the word market. Item market, which is there under list 2, is critical. What we're really discussing is the markets and agriculture on a conjoined and a harmonious interpretation. So therefore, it is the state governments which have the legislative competence, number one. Number two, like I said earlier in my opening statement, under Article 254, subclause 2, the state can legislate on this subject. Of course, whether the president gives us assent, whether the central government blocks that legislation, that's a different story. We'll cross the bridge when it comes. But as far as the state government is concerned, in terms of Article 254, 2, and in terms of list 2 of the 7th schedule, we are competent to legislate and nullify this legislation.
Okay, Mahesh Tapase, here is my other question to you. Since it is largely a state legislation, why don't we at least resolve? Yes, Mr. Agarwal, I'm coming to you next. But Mahesh Tapase, why doesn't the state ensure that at least in the designated current markets under the APMC, give the farmer what is his due, ensure that the farmer has that option of coming to your APMC market and selling it at the right price?
Then procurement is done by the FCI, Government of India.
Very correct and apt question that you have put across, Tanvi. The whole debate here is not why not stopping the farmer to go to the private player. It is about the governmental intervention in times of crisis. What if the private player fails to honor his commitment? What if there is an excess production of food grain and there's a drop in price? How will the farmer sustain the agriculture produce and the expenditure that he has made? So this is where the intervention of the government in terms of MSP via the food corporation, the container corporation, the cotton corporation, and the jute corporation, this is where the central government intervention has to come in by way of an MSP, which is budgeted in the union budget, which is passed by the parliament every year. Now, my question to my colleague in the BJP is, what is the agriculture budget that you propose to pass in 2021-22? Now, are you going to make any provision for the MSP, knowing fully well now there's a private player who's going to buy the produce? Initially, for a year or two, he might buy the produce and the farmers might think that they're benefiting. But the day the private player decides to drop the price, will your government will be having the requisite funds within the agricultural boards to purchase the produce? This is the question number one. Secondly, now the entire market operation in the corporate world happens in the futures market, in which our farmers don't play in the futures market. So in the futures market, the price of a commodity at the end of on the last Thursday of the month is already decided. So big players, big corporate players who are sitting miles and miles away with loads and loads of money, they will be doing the procurement on the net, on the commodity exchange. They will be determining the price, not the government. In that case, when the price drops, where is my government? How is it going to intervene to save my farmer? This is the only question that the opposition is asking. Nobody is saying that if the government is allowing the farmer to sell the produce to the private sector, nobody is opposing that. We are only apprehending that in worst case scenario, where the government stands.
Okay, Mr. Gopal Agarwal, respond to that.
Tanvi, there are 2-3 things we should understand. It's a complicated issue, but very important for the country. The commodities market is, Mr. Tapse is saying, it is in India since 2002. It is not now that we are introducing the commodities future market. Second thing is that the issue of what you had asked the question, that can the state government not accept the law implemented by the center, passed by the parliament and given assent by the president? If they do like that, that is Article 370. That we had fought for 70 years. That the state government cannot or have the right to reject the laws implemented by the center. Whatever is in the domain of state, that the state will pass. Whatever is in the domain of center, that the center will pass. Whatever is there in the concurrent list, if the center passes the legislation on it, then it has to be accepted by the state. So this situation is also very clear. There are certain objections that our discussion do not solve all the problems of the farmers within the first law. Therefore, I am telling you that we have not discussed second and third law. If you look into the three, we are trying to solve the market problem, commodities market problem and agriculture sectors woes, which they are feeling for last 65 years. If the current status was good for the farmers, why only 5% is being procured? It is only 5% is being procured by the state government under the MSP. Why is this situation? And if this situation is to continue, there is no status quo, no change in the status quo. If the opposition parties want that, then how will you solve the problems of the farmers? We are trying to come out with a competitive market economy where it is not alone these three bills, but also the farmers producer organizations that we are implementing. We have now 76,000 farmers producers organizations which will come together to come together in a cooperative format where they can come out with value addition. There is a warehousing requirement
Okay.
that is we are trying to
Okay.
fulfill it. So you have to see all together. And then if you see into one bill and then say
Okay.
there are certain problems with this bill is not solving, I am also accepting. You have to see all the total requirement, total bill initiatives, and whatever government is doing for last 65 years.
Okay, take a look. See
status quo
the
has to
larger
continue,
picture. Gopal
what will
Agarwal
happen?
says, see the larger picture. If there is a problem, we will look at it later. Adil, your response to that.
Tanvi is a perfect example. If we have to take practical experience or historical experience about such legislation, the perfect example is the abolition of the APMC Act by the Bihar Assembly in 2006. Please pick up that. That's a case study. In fact, Mira now should do a case study on how agriculture and marginal farmers has been pushed to penury in Bihar. That was courtesy the abolition of the
वो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने किया था, सेंटर ने नहीं किया. स्टेट गवर्नमेंट कर सकता है.
सुन लीजिए,
नहीं, तो
किसान
फिर आप
विरोधी नरेंद्र मोदी, सुन लीजिए, प्लीज हेयर मी आउट.
अरे
नंबर
किसान
1,
विरोधी आप सोनिया जी को समझाइए कि वो अराजकता ना फैलाए, ट्रकों को सड़कों पे ना जलाए.
Okay,
hear
okay.
me out. I will interrupt.
I'm a
Number
little
2.
short on time. Let Adil finish his
Number
point.
2.
Yes, yes.
Number 2. Tanvi, let me test what Mr. Agarwal is saying on face value. If the objective is that by diluting or liberalizing the market framework, the farmers will get higher price than the MSP, then what is the difficulty in putting down a clause in the law that the floor price for
Why you
transaction...
didn't do it for 65 years? Why didn't you make it a legislative law of
Madam,
MSP?
can I intervene?
आदिल साहब, आपने 65 साल क्यों नहीं एमएसपी को लीगलाइज किया? लॉ क्यों नहीं लाया?
Madam, this government is predetermined to implement.
Bharatiya Janata Party is a party
This
of the
government is
Ambani.
predetermined to implement this law, irrespective of the pros and cons
Okay, I can't understand.
of this
I
country.
cannot understand anybody. Yes, yes. I cannot understand anybody, please. Okay, 30 seconds to Mr. Gowda before I wrap this. Yes. Yes, yes, Mr. Gowda.
10 seconds to me also.
Yeah, please. Thank you, madam. Thank you. Madam, this government is predetermined to implement these laws and they have done it.
Yes.
But they have never
Yes,
worried about the farmers of this country.
We are
Pros and
worried for
cons of
farmers,
these
therefore we are
farmers,
doing it.
they never worried. They are only worried about the group
You
of the
are worried
people
about the
of the
middleman.
country, and
You
this
are worried
government
about
is
the
totally
politics side of it. We are
against
worried
the
for the
farmers.
farmers.
My dear BJP friend, you are against the farmers and you will have to pay for it in future. That's all I wanted to say, madam, at this point of junction.
Okay, completely out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, all of our panelists. Thank you for joining us, viewers. One thing is, clear that the opposition or anybody right now does have the right to go to the court, maybe, and then it depends on the Supreme Court whether they want to take a look at this case or not. As the opposition fights the central government on the implementation of the 3 farm bills, at the end of the day, the confusion and the lack of clarity is only going to impact our Kisan. Now, you've heard both sides repeatedly. We've given you the pros and cons of these legislations. What remains to be seen is that if it actually goes beyond politics and mere grandstanding, and how it impacts the farmer in our country. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. We move on very quickly to a special guest who is joining us right now. Now, viewers, just a few days ago, as you heard, Sushant's family questioned the CBI. The lawyer for Sushant's family, Mr. Vikas Singh, came out and questioned the delay in the probe by the CBI, the very slow movement. Why is it that they're not coming and giving us a status? They also said that the probe has been diverted, misdirected, and nobody is looking at the core issue right now. Now, we've decided to also speak to the lawyer representing Riya Chakrabarti. So Satish Manashinde, he not only represents Riya but is now also representing Kshitij Prasad in the NCB drug investigation right now. The ex-Dharma Production associate who's been arrested. Mr. Satish Manashinde, thank you so much for joining me right now on this conversation. Let me begin by asking you this question since it's now been raised by the other side. Are you satisfied with the pace of CBI investigation?
Well, I have said right from the beginning that Riya Chakravarti faced Mumbai police as well as to some extent Patna police got into the picture. Thereafter it went to CBI, ED and NCB for a case of abetment to suicide or suicide. She has been made to face 5 investigating agencies, which according to me is unheard of in India. Apart from all this, I must say that CBI is a professional investigating agency and it is taking its own time, probably because the controversy involved in the case and the allegations being made. Apart from all that, the entire Bollywood was being paraded by NCB and various organizations. So they probably will take their own time to reach the conclusions so that they don't make any mistake.
But do you find it odd that the fact that the AIMS forensic report hasn't been given to the CBI yet, hasn't been shared or hasn't come out at all? Do you fear, Mr. Manashinde, that there may be some kind of foul play at work or some pressure?
See, the Mumbai police, after the postmortem was conducted, they got the report sometime in the month of July. And they had concluded that there was no foul play in the case. Now, the AIMS medical team did not have the opportunity of seeing the dead body because they came much after the Supreme Court came into the picture and transferred the matter to the CBI. So they are now saddled with the report of the Mumbai doctors of Cooper Hospital. Secondly, they have the video record of the postmortem and the viscera. So probably they're taking their own time and like I said, every team takes its own time. So we'll await the findings. There's nothing unusual about it. What is unusual about is the lawyer for the family disclosed a couple of days back that the AIMS doctor, head of the team now, had disclosed to him that he had seen the pictures which one of the sisters of Sushant Singh Rajput had captured at the scene of the incident. And those pictures were sent to the doctor by the family. And after viewing the pictures, he had come to a 200% conclusion that it was a case of strangulation. I don't know how somebody can come to a conclusion by seeing the pictures. To come to a conclusion, you must see the postmortem report, you must see the viscera, you must see the videograph, you must see the position in which the body was. So all these factors should be considered. And if the doctor has given such a finding, the first thing that the CBI should do to see that the investigations are impartial and without any partisan behavior, the team should be reconstituted. The CBI should take utmost care that nobody from the team speaks to anybody else till the report is actually filed either before the court or before the CBI comes to a finding. And if certain issues are being discussed in the media, particularly by the doctor and the family members, it tells me that the investigations are not going on in the right direction.
But will those pictures be admissible in court, Mr. Manashinde?
Well, they are shot by the family members of the deceased. They are not shot by the investigating agency. So I don't know what would be the veracity of those pictures and whether they are, to be accepted or no, will be left to the investigating agency and the court. But according to me, since they're not coming from the custody of the investigating agency, it will be objectionable to admit them in the court of law.
Okay, but you're saying the judging by the conduct, the way the conduct has been, there is a case to be made for the replacement of the entire forensic team.
I think, in view of the fact that the head of the team had spoken to the family lawyer, it tells me that there is a predetermined goal post which they want to reach, and that should not be encouraged. And the CBI should be advised to change the entire team and see that it's free from any interference.
One thing that I found very intriguing in your arguments for RIA is that you said that even the investigation by other agencies, including the NCB, that case should be transferred to the CBI. They don't have a right or a jurisdiction to be investigating Riya Chakrabarti at all. Now, when many wonder why would you say that at a time when it doesn't look as if any agency, including the CBI, is being very kind to your client?
Well, the reason I made that argument in the court challenging the jurisdiction of the NCB was that the Supreme Court, in paragraph 41 of its order dated 19th of August 2020, has made it clear that Sushant Singh death's investigation should be transferred to the CBI. And it has made a particular reference that any case pertaining to the death of Sushant Singh Rajput should be investigated by CBI, so that there is unanimity of investigation as well as it is under one head, and that tomorrow there is no controversy of any nature either at Maharashtra or in Patna. And the CBI is investigating that case which is transferred. Apart from that, any case relating to the death of Sushant Singh Rajput should be investigated by CBI. The NCB in its remand application and the replies to the bail application of both Shovik Chakravarti and Riya Chakravarti has said that since the case which they are investigating, 16 of 2020, relates to the angle which is being investigated in respect of Sushant Singh Rajput to be a drug angle, my submission was on the basis of the papers produced by the CBI as well as the NCB. So therefore, my argument will be judged from that view of the matter by the High Court. And if it wants to, it can. If it doesn't want to, it will have to give its reasons. That will be decided tomorrow in the court of law.
Mr. Manashinde, can you help our viewers understand this? In this case where NCB, the Narcotics Control Bureau, didn't even seek Riya's custody after they arrested her. They said, we've asked the questions we needed to, we don't need any information, so she sent to judicial custody. Why is it then that it has then taken so long for a decision on her bail?
Well, since she was sent to custody after the Sessions Court said that the investigations are complete, and the department said that they didn't want her custody. If they didn't want her custody, there is no reason why she was sent to judicial custody. So we applied for bail. The Sessions Court felt that Section 27A is an offence which is punishable with more than 10 years. Though there is no allegation that she is a part of an international drug trafficking organization or concerned with storing or cultivating drugs to illegally traffic it. The High Court will listen to that argument tomorrow and decide it. So every proceeding in a court of law takes its own time. And this is one of those cases which is taking a longer time.
Mr. Manashinde, in any tough case, a part of the strategy is also to see what the other side is saying or doing and what their strategy seems to be. So I'm asking you this question: why do you think that Sushant Singh family's lawyer came out and said the CBI is going slow or the probe has been diverted? Whereas the larger perception is that it's been working to get justice for Sushant.
See, they had a complaint against the Bombay police who were investigating the case and Supreme Court found no malafides in the investigation of the Mumbai police. The CBI is investigating it for the last 2 months, and I always said right from the beginning that tomorrow, if they don't get the desired result that they want, they'll someday make an allegation against the CBI, and that apprehension has come true.
Well, Mr. Satish Manashinde, I appreciate you taking the time out and speaking to us and speaking to the viewers of Mirror Now. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, with that, we're going to take a very short break. Lots more news and updates on the other side. Stay with me here on Urban Debate.